Welcome back to the Big Lad podcast. In this episode, we've got a very interesting topic on our hands. Andrew Tate is running for Prime Minister, apparently. He has started a new party coined BRUV, which stands for Britain Restoring Underlying Values. Don't know really where it's come from. It seems to still be a little bit low-key. So I actually ran a pretty interesting poll on my Instagram story. So basically what I did was I'd seen this on Twitter, found his manifesto, had a read through it, and I just thought, I'm going to put it to my Instagram following without telling them it's Andrew Tate. Feel like Andrew Tate is a little bit of like Voldemort in Harry Potter. You can't really say his name on social media. So hopefully this doesn't just disappear into the ether. But we'll see. So yeah, I ran a poll on my Instagram, basically just doing each policy one by one, and then gave three options. It was agree, disagree, or neither agree or disagree. And it was pretty interesting because then afterwards I let everyone know who it was and saw whether that changed people's opinions. So basically what I'm going to go through is each of the policies in his manifesto. As an overall view, when I was looking through it, it's one of them. He makes pretty good points. The only thing is, I think he ruins it by making it sort of Andrew Tate towards the end, like a bit too aggressive with some of the things that he wants to do. But I think the general message is fairly there or thereabouts on most points. Obviously, the issue that people have is his overall perception in the media and things like that. You've probably tend to see the worst things of him because that's what goes viral. Now, it is very hard to tell whether what he says on social media is for sort of views, virality, and things like that, to essentially funnel certain types of people through to his Hustlers University. Part of me thinks it is, maybe not. I'm not too sure. But he's not a stupid guy. I think that's one thing you can say from a general standpoint, even if you don't like the guy. The way he can get views to then convert them into sort of paying customers through his Hustlers University, he's obviously very good at it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made all the money that he's made. Now, obviously, we've seen people like Dan Bilzerian before that have claimed to be multi-millionaires. And it turns out, yeah, they're still very wealthy, but nowhere near as wealthy as you actually perceive them through social media. So it's up in arms whether he is as wealthy as he says he is. He says he's a billionaire. I mean, he can't be far off if you've got a Bugatti. So yeah, maybe not. Who knows? This, by the way, is a podcast. It's not about me sort of supporting him and pushing him to be Prime Minister. It's more of just going through each of the policies and the Instagram results that I got from my followers. Instagram did screw me over a little bit because I put so many stories up at once. It didn't reach as many people as it usually would, which was a bit annoying. But still, nevertheless, got some really good data. So I'm going to share that with you guys through each one. Basically, I'm going to read each policy and then the results that I got off the back of it. And there's a really interesting overall view right at the end. So stick around for that because I think you find it pretty interesting. So his first policy on the manifesto was harsh migration control. So he goes on to say, over 45,000 illegal migrants arrived on our British shores last year, each one costing you, the British taxpayer, £15,000 annually. That's your hard-earned money, funding people who have no respect for our borders, our laws, our way of life. The solution is clear. Not one more boat lands on British soil. Boats will be leaving the UK filled with illegal migrants, and not a single one will be arriving on our shores. This is a campaign guarantee. The Royal Navy will patrol our waters, and our message will be clear. If you come here illegally, you will not set foot on this land. Our borders are sacred. Our sovereignty is not negotiable. So, first of all, the results of that one, 57% agreed, 27% disagreed, and 16% neither agree or disagree. Now, for me, I do think as a country we are relatively soft in terms of migrants coming over. I'm talking mainly here the illegal migrants. I would like to see the country have like a bit of a harder take on illegal migrants instead of just putting them into housing, giving them allowances and things like that. Because a lot of people do come from these poorer countries over here and then use our sort of NHS, things like that. And I understand because they are obviously coming from very difficult places, sometimes war-torn countries. But I don't think that means we just automatically take them in. And I said, well, it's costing the British taxpayer £15,000 annually each person. And there was 45,000 of them. So quick maths, it is a lot of money. Oh, by the way, I have not checked these numbers. I'm going purely off what this says. So that works out at £675 million that illegal migrants cost us as a country just last year, which is an incredible amount of money that could obviously go to other things. Now, I'm not saying to necessarily be as harsh as just chucking them back out, but it's obviously a very strong issue that we have as a country. 45,000 illegal migrants. These aren't just like legal migrants that have come through the correct protocols to come across. These are illegal migrants that are just essentially rocking up on boats, and then we are housing them, giving them allowances, and it's costing us a hell of a lot of money as a country. And 57% of people agreed, 27% disagreed, and 16% neither agree or disagree. So you could say the agree or disagree could be put into either category, but as a whole, a majority of people agree with that one. Then we have the second one, which is the knife crime epidemic, zero tolerance, maximum deterrence. So last year, there were 50,000 knife crime offences in England and Wales. That's 137 every single day. Mothers burying sons, fathers burying daughters, lives stolen, futures destroyed. And what's the punishment? A slap on the wrist, a few years in jail? No, the punishment will be seen by every Briton every day. Introducing BBC Punishment, a 24/7 live broadcast of knife crime offenders serving solitary confinement. No redemption arcs, no second chances, just the cold, hard reality of a life wasted in a concrete cell. Imagine a 15-year-old boy tempted to pick up a blade, turning on the TV and seeing a man grow old and die alone. That's not cruelty, it's deterrence, and it will save lives. Now, the results on this one, 67% agreed, 17% disagreed, and 17% also neither agree or disagree. I think we can say, yeah, knife crime is a very big problem in this country. I actually saw a clip on Instagram of somebody questioning the Mayor of London the other day, asking whether London was safe, and he said yes. However, then they broke down the knife crime. I think it was comparing 2016 to 2024, and off the top of my head, I think it had increased by around 50% or 55%. Yet he still said it was safer now, which from the data alone, it went off knife crime, gun crime, and robberies and thefts. They'd all gone up over that period of time since he has been in. Yeah, he seems to think it's a safer place to be, which, can't lie, every time I go to London, a little bit on edge in certain areas. So yeah, a overwhelming portion of that poll agreed that there is obviously a very big issue with knife crime. For me, spending the money to have the BBC Punishment 24/7 live broadcast, I think that's going to obviously cost a lot of money, maybe a little bit too far, but there is something that definitely needs to be done. I mean, it's not a bad idea in terms of sort of being a deterrent, but I'm not sure a 24/7 live broadcast maybe is the way. I'm not too sure. Let me know what you think. Next one, we've got reforming the BBC, a rotten institution. So the BBC was once a cornerstone of British culture. Today it's a stain on our nation's name. Sexual abuse scandals, allegations of child exploitation, and reports of pornographic content. This is not just negligence, it's rot, and it must be purged. The BBC will be stripped down and rebuilt. Its mission will be factual reporting and not propaganda. BBC will get its topics from X, formerly known as Twitter, and have a community note-style online system for verification of all stories and debate with the public. The BBC will have a public trust score based on its accurate reporting of events and voted on by the populace. The BBC must reach a minimum trust level to be government funded. The BBC must serve Britain and not undermine it. So that one, 69% agreed, 14% disagreed, and 17% neither agree or disagree. Obviously, we're all aware of the issues with the BBC and some of the reporters and just reporting in general. Interesting one that he mentioned, that it'll get its topics from X and have a community note style online. I did see this week that Mark Zuckerberg is changing Facebook to get rid of fact checkers. I think it was, because of the issues that they've been having, and moved to a sort of community note style. But yeah, I think not just the BBC, it is an issue from the news sort of worldwide, really. It's not just the BBC. You could look at all the rest of them, Sky, NBC in America. There's plenty of them that all seem to have a sort of narrative instead of reporting the actual facts, which is obviously an issue because, like it says, they're going to go for a minimum trust score. I think it will be very interesting to see how many people actually trust what comes from the news. Again, not just from the BBC, but newspapers, other news reporters. I think personally that it would be the older generation that find it more trustworthy than the people that grew up in the internet era, where you do see things like conspiracies online with Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. There are plenty of conspiracies out there, and it does, to be fair, get you thinking and looking the other way, because how much can we trust things like the BBC these days? I'm not sure many people do trust it. But like I say, I think it would be the older generation, so it'd be interesting in maybe another generation or two's time, the trust in national media, because then you're going to have a full sort of population of people that grew up in the internet era with access to things like conspiracy theories and things like that. Next one, protecting our children and restoring traditional values. So the attack on our culture doesn't end with the BBC. It's happening in our schools, where the innocence of children is being sacrificed on the altar of ideology. Did you know that children as young as 6 are being exposed to graphic LGBTQ plus materials? This is not education, it's indoctrination. Let me be crystal clear, all LGBTQ propaganda will be banned from schools. Classrooms will no longer be battlegrounds for ideological warfare. Instead, we will promote traditional family values, respect, responsibility, and the importance of strong family bonds. This is not about hate, it's about protecting childhood. 52% agree, 39% disagreed, and 10% neither agree or disagree. Now, this is obviously a big topic that's probably been across the social media for a good few years now. And I think there is an importance of children, not necessarily as young as 6, probably a bit older, learning about, different people and the backgrounds that they come from. However, I think 6 is far too young, especially if it's graphic material. None of this was really in schools when I was younger, and I'm only 28, so it's not like it's years and years ago. We're talking, so from, say, high school, so 17 years ago I started high school, up until, what would that be, 12 years ago. Didn't really have a lot of the LGBTQ plus, even that's hard enough to say. You do get, obviously, the awareness that there are people that may like the same gender, there may be, different interests out there, but I don't think it has to go into the detail like it's saying graphic. I saw a clip online the other day. It was a father ringing into a radio station, and he was complaining about what his kid had learned in school, and they were talking about gay intercourse, it was, and they did a graphic presentation in the school. This was to a class of autistic kids, or at least the son was autistic, and they used a banana and Nutella, which you don't have to think too much about what that act is. But this kid now won't eat Nutella with his toast or whatever he had it on. He's literally scarred from wanting to eat Nutella, which is obviously a bit of an issue, and I don't think it's really appropriate to be doing those sorts of presentations in the school, especially, it's a little bit inappropriate. I think the kid was, I can't remember, he was either 8 or 12, I can't remember, but yeah, there's ways about going about it, and I think to an extent some of it has gone too far. Listen, each to their own, you do you sort of thing. I have no issues with that. I think it's the way it's being forced upon people. I don't think that's right, and especially as young as 6. I think you tend to learn about it naturally anyway. I don't think there's a need for it being pressed on people. You learn about it all anyway, and I've grew up absolutely fine and accepting of everyone. So yeah, obviously there's a need for things like sex education and stuff like that in school. That is important. But then to take it to the levels of getting Nutella and bananas out, yeah, that's too far. But Yeah, this is what I was saying. So I think to an extent he makes some good points, but then it goes a little bit too far with the complete and utter banning of this information from school in terms of like propaganda in general. Yeah, I think that should be probably banned from school. But yeah, traditional family values are probably the majority of the country. Now, I'm not saying that's more important at all than any other sort of setup, but yeah, it's an awkward one. Next one, restoring British culture and identity. Britain's history is under attack. Our heroes are vilified, our traditions dismissed, and our streets no longer reflect the country we know and love. It's time to restore pride in our heritage, appoint a minister for British culture to celebrate and preserve our history, cap non-British residents at 10% of the population to maintain cultural balance, replace modern art with statues and monuments honouring British heroes, ensure every street in Britain feels British with English signage, flags and traditional architecture. Any illegal migrants which identified by a police officer will be arrested and deported from the nation within 7 days. No court case, no compromise. Illegals will leave. You have no rights to British soil. Men died for our flag. It should be seen on our streets. Now, this sounds a little bit EDL to me. But, yeah, I think having the multicultural aspect of any country is obviously fairly important to have a bit of diversity. Restoring British culture completely to, 10% of the population non-British residents, I think you'd have to kick out a hell of a lot of people to get to that 10% number. So I don't think that is realistic at all. Replacing modern art with statues and monuments of honouring British heroes, modern art in general, I'm not a fan of it. I'm not necessarily saying replace it with statues and monuments, but yeah, I'm not a fan of the whole modern art thing. I don't really get it. Maybe because I'm not really into art. Ensuring every street in Britain feels British. Again, it depends what he means by that in terms of feeling British with English signage. I feel like everywhere's got English signage. There might obviously be certain restaurants, fast food places, markets that have maybe some foreign language in because it is maybe like a Chinese supermarket or something like that. And I have no issues with that. So yeah, I think there's a hell of a lot of work that you'd have to do to sort of get this one through, and I'm not really sure if I'm I don't mind the appointing a minister for British culture just to sort of maintain and preserve our history. Obviously, parts of it may not be good, but I think if you go to any country, there's parts of history that aren't great in general, but celebrating the good parts and preserving that, I get it. Any illegal migrants identified, that kind of links in with his one from before. And yeah, I mean, if they're illegally here, then they shouldn't be here in the first place. So unless they come through sort of the correct routes in terms of migrating into Britain, then yeah, I mean, maybe no court case is a bit too far. Maybe give them a chance. Like I said, there's people coming from war-torn countries and stuff like that. If there's genuine reasons why they've had to come illegally, then potentially give them the chance to have a court case. But yeah, if there's people out there taking the mick out of the system and landing on boats, then yeah, they should probably be deported back to where they came from in the first place. Next one, revolutionising education, building the future Britain deserves. So, Britain's future doesn't lie in outdated manufacturing, it lies in innovation and entrepreneurship and technology. To create a nation of leaders and problem solvers, we will overhaul the national curriculum to prioritise entrepreneurship, critical thinking and financial literacy. Arm young Britons with the skills to launch businesses, pioneer technologies and dominate the global stage. Teach our children not to just take jobs, but to create them. A nation of innovators is a nation of power. Britain may not outplace the world in manufacturing, but it can lead as a global business and technology powerhouse. The transformation starts in our schools. We'll teach every child the value of hard work, the tools to succeed, and the drive to build a future where they can provide for their families and thrive in a competitive world. 83% agreed, 8% disagreed, and 8% neither agree or disagree. Now, I know that doesn't add up to 100%. There's obviously decimal places in there, but Instagram does not give it me. Yes, so I agree and disagree to certain points. So, in terms of overhauling the national curriculum to prioritise entrepreneurship, critical thinking, and financial literacy, I think that is a fairly important thing in general. I think the school system is very outdated. There's a lot of stuff that you learn, and yes, it's just to show you're capable of learning to a level, but quite a lot of it is not useful in real life at all. However, making sort of everyone, so teach our children not to just take jobs, but to create them. We can't all be business owners. So there's 70 million people in the country. Say, for the sake of it, 40 or 50 million of them are of working age. You can't have like 40 or 50 million companies in the country. Obviously, there's still got to be people that work for people, and that's the way it always will be. I think in terms of teaching the people that would like to go down that route and give them the option, that would be very beneficial, because at the moment the only place that you really see that is on Instagram, and it's those people that are like, drop me a DM and I'll teach you how to get your first 10k a month, and that could be PT, Amazon drop shipping, whatever. But a lot of it is self-taught, and I've put a few stories up on my Instagram before about investing and stuff like that, and just the amount of people that have no idea about it or how to do it or what they should do with their money is pretty baffling. There's not a lot of people that really understand how to even basically invest money into a simple stocks and shares ISA. So I think from a point, getting something into the curriculum about just general day-to-day living, to be quite honest as well, because when I moved out to get a mortgage and things like that, didn't really have a clue what I had to do, what I needed to sign, what I needed to get ready, because you never learn it. It's sort of a first thing, and you learn off your mum and dad, and then essentially if we have kids as a generation, then we've got to pass it down instead of actually just learning and going into it. Like, a lot of people stress about just moving out and getting a house. So yeah, I think stuff like that, like financial literacy, critical thinking, should be in schools. Like, I did critical thinking as a first year of college AS level, and it was rubbish. I'm not going to lie, really bad. I thought it was going to be a lot more interesting, but because I was in like the higher sets in school, I got offered to do this critical thinking as like a one-off thing. And yeah, it was rubbish. I very quickly dropped out of that because I was just wasting my time. In terms of Britain may not be outpace the world in manufacturing, I think we're way behind that now. You've got places like China and India that can mass produce pretty much anything. And I think, we are outdated in terms of manufacturing now. But in terms of leading as a global business and technology powerhouse, potentially, who knows? But the teaching of every child the value of hard work, the tools to succeed, and the drive to build future where they can provide for their families and thrive in a competitive world. Good, positive point. I think as a generation now, because we have literally anything at the touch of a button, we can get food within 20 minutes. You can get an Amazon delivery the next day. You can get anything pretty much in an instant. Our generation has become very, very lazy, and it is not very hard to be better than average these days, I would say. It is quite easy to be fairly successful without putting too much effort in, because just the people around you aren't willing to put the work in, and we have just become generally lazy. So I don't think it'd be a bad thing to have a new generation coming through that are willing to put hard work in and willing to be successful and sort of essentially drive the country forward in a way, depending on what they go into, what sort of field they go into. So I think, that is probably a very good one. I think the education system does need a little bit of a shake-up, because I think it's fairly similar for the last 50 to 100 years probably. I wouldn't imagine there's much of a difference in curriculum, to be quite honest, especially when it comes to things like maths. Nothing's going to change. There's no new theories that have magically came out. I was still doing theories that, I haven't touched since I left college. So, I think we do need to get some more basic life skills basically into school and just set people up in the right way to go through the right direction, instead of forcing people down this education route, because it's just primary school, high school, college, and then there's that big shove to try and get you into uni. And the amount of people that I know that have gone to university and then not used their degree at all when it comes to actually going into the real world. And you see so many people go uni for the sake of it, and then they end up going travelling for 6 to 12 months, which, yeah, fair enough, go travelling, but you didn't need to go to uni in the first place because you're going to come back, and then they tend to go into a completely different job anyway. Yeah, I think that's a fairly good point, and 83% of people agreed. Next one. Investing where it matters. For decades, Britain has spent $14 billion annually on foreign aid, much of it going to countries that later send migrants to our shores, costing taxpayers even more money. While we fund other nations, our communities are being neglected. Nearly 1 in 5 schools in England is rated inadequate or requires improvement. Some areas face infrastructure deficits with crumbling roads, underfunded public transport, and dilapidated community centres. Meanwhile, foreign aid recipients often misuse these funds with little accountability or benefit to Britain. Now, I don't actually know what these countries end up using it for. I just know we send a hell of a lot of money abroad when we have so many issues in our own country that we don't put money towards, and 14 billion is a hell of a lot of money. One of the main ones that stick out to me, because I do moan about it quite a lot, is crumbling roads. The amount of times there are potholes in the roads in the UK and they just do not get sorted. They get a little patch up and then 6 months later they are just as bad, if not worse. There's a bigger hole in the road. And we all pay road tax. We all pay various other taxes that you may not even think are taxes, but they are. And as a country, there's obviously major issues. You've got homeless people, you've got the roads, you've got nearly 1 in 5 schools in England is inadequate or requires improvement. There's obviously money that needs to be spent in more important places. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't be sending money abroad to help other countries. We should, because you never know, we may need it at some point. But why are we not fixing the issues in our own country first? This one, 74% of people agreed, 13% disagreed, 13% neither agree or disagree. So then, kind of moving on from that last one, no more foreign aid, no more foreign wars. So foreign aid spending will be cut to zero. Every single pound will be reinvested into building Britain, modernising schools, repairing facilities, and ensuring every child learns in an environment that inspires success. Billions will fund infrastructure projects to rejuvenate neglected towns and cities, giving communities the resources they need to thrive. The British military will no longer be a tool for global conflicts. The Minister of Defence will have one mission: defend our borders and our sovereignty. The Channel will be secured, our shores will be protected, and every ship, plane and soldier will serve only the interests of the British people. There's no injustice for sending men, weapons or resources to foreign wars when Britain is under siege at home. The military's focus will be singular: the protection of our homeland. Sovereignty starts here. 60% agreed, 28% disagreed, and 12% neither agree or disagree. Like I said just before, I don't think the foreign aid spending should be cut to zero. I think it should be reduced and be put into the things that he's just mentioned. But I think you never know in the future. There could be a time when we need foreign aid. You never know. And if we're not sending foreign aid, then we get into a war at some point along the line. Maybe we get invaded. We're probably going to need help from other countries. And if we've been cutting our foreign aid to nothing, then what is the incentive to other people to help us out? I think, obviously, there are different international agreements that I'm not really aware of. To be quite honest, since COVID, I haven't had no interest in the news because, like I mentioned before, I don't know what you can trust anymore. So, and it's always just negative. So I've just literally put a block on it from my brain. So in terms of international agreements that we may or may not have, and where this foreign aid's going and what for, and what it's being spent on and what it's supposed to be spent on, I'm not too sure. But yes, I do think we could probably reduce the amount of money that we send abroad to help our own country rebuild itself, because there are a lot of outdated areas just in general. Like there's a couple of towns around where I live that were meant to be like back in the 80s, like these futuristic towns, and you go to them now and they are awful. Like they look ugly. They're just big concrete blocks everywhere, and it's grim. It needs to be revamped. And like I said, we've got people on our streets in 2025 and we're sending money abroad instead. I think we should do a bit more to help our own people, and obviously schools as well. The next one, so prioritising the NHS, healthcare for Britons first. The NHS is in crisis. Waiting times are at an all-time high, with 7.6 million people waiting for treatment as of 2023, yet billions are spent on treating individuals who have never contributed to the system. There must be change. Priority 1, British taxpayers. The people who fund the NHS should come first. Priority 2, British passport holders, those who carry the privilege and responsibility of citizenship. Priority 3, everyone else. Emergency care only, with costs recovered wherever possible. Did you know the NHS spends £500 million annually on health tourism, treating people who travel to the UK solely for free healthcare? This is unsustainable. The NHS exists to serve the British people and not the world. Now, it is, we all know the NHS is just on its arse, really. I think it's really, really badly run, and it could do probably with a revamp from just the people that run it, to be quite honest. Probably get some successful business people in there and treat it as a business to run more efficiently, because it's clearly not working. 7.6 million people waiting for treatment as of 2023. That's 10% of more than 10% of the population which are waiting for treatment. Now, obviously, if you think about it, you're not going to say everyone needs treatment at the same time. So what percentage of people are waiting for treatment of the people that actually need it as well? It's a lot of people. I don't think a tiered system is necessarily the worst thing. But like I was saying before about the illegal migrants, there's people that come here for essentially free healthcare, and because they can't get it in the country, whatever reason it is. But £500 million annually just on health tourism is a hell of a lot of money. Imagine what that could go towards. I don't necessarily disagree with the priority 3 part where it says that costs recovered wherever possible, because if you were to go abroad and something was to happen, you would have to pay the costs abroad, or your travel insurance would cover it. So it should probably work the other way. I don't know if it does. I don't know how it works, but it sounds like a lot of people are essentially coming here and getting free healthcare. On this one, 80% agreed, 20% disagreed, and 0% neither agree or disagree. I think I had a message off the back of someone that disagreed with this. I think it was the wording of the British taxpayer bit. I can't remember, but there was something in the wording and I was like, yeah, I understand what you say. Something to do with the citizenship side of things. But maybe that's not the best tiering system, but I don't think a tiering system would necessarily be the worst thing to happen. But then you could have a lot of people in priority 2 that aren't getting seen because a load of people are getting prioritised in priority 1, which is just the British taxpayer. Because I still imagine that British passport holders are still paying tax in this country. Those who carry privilege and responsibility of citizenship, they would still be paying tax, I would imagine, in Britain. So would they not fall under priority 1 as well? I'm not too sure. The next one, we've got accountability in the government. So did you know that over 30% of MPs fail to meet basic attendance standards? These are people meant to lead us, to fight for us. They're not even showing up. It's simple. You don't show up, you're out. MPs will work for the people and not their paycheck. Weekly referendums powered by blockchain will give every Briton a voice on the issue that matters most. We're not taking back our borders, we're taking back our democracy. 83% agreed, 13% disagreed, and 4% neither agree or disagree. Now, I've mentioned this to my brother on a walk, actually, in terms of accountability in the government. I personally haven't voted in the last fair few elections now, because you have these sort of people just coming in, saying they're going to do this, that, and the other, and then they never do any of it. They basically say a load of stuff to get votes, and then they're never held accountable to what they've said they're going to do. So for me, it should work kind of like at work, where you have targets set at the start of the year, you get judged on them, then that either correlates to like a bonus or a percentage increase for your pay for the next year. That should be fairly similar for the government, I would say. If you said you're going to do this, that, and the other, and then 6 months in, you've not even got close to what you said you were going to do, then there needs to be some sort of review process and accountability. Now, they're just talking purely from an attendance standard. which, should be sorted, really. If 30% of MPs fail to meet basic attendance standards, then there's clearly an issue. These are the people that are meant to be running the country, and they're not turning up. Yeah, I think there should be some sort of almost a merit. It's kind of like a merit process, isn't it? Or just general performance review. If you're not doing what you said you were voted in for, then what's the consequence? Like, you could potentially lose your job if you did that at work. Like, if I had targets set and I don't hit those targets, there could be a potential performance, like a serious performance review in terms of going down a route that may lead to getting sacked. So, we're talking about the people that run the country. If they're not doing what they said they're going to do, then there needs to be some sort of consequence and accountability for that. Next one, we've got zero tolerance on crime. If you're a non-citizen and you commit a crime here, no matter how small your gun, instant deportation, zero appeals. For those born here, we'll put 25,000 plainclothes officers in London alone. Violent offenders will face the full face of the law, and police officers will meet strict physical standards. Britain will once again be a safe place to walk, live, and thrive. 65% agree, 17% disagree, and 70% neither agree or disagree. So the first part, if you're a non-citizen and you commit a crime here, instant deportation. I don't know if that... Does that count as in, like, if you were here on holiday? I'm not sure. I assume if you were to commit a crime anywhere whilst you were on holiday, you'd probably end up getting deported anyway. But it's saying no matter how small. Like, if you nicked, like, a chocolate bar from a shop, I'm not saying it's okay, but, like, instant deportation for nicking a chocolate bar. Because he's saying no matter how small. Yeah, I'm not sure that would work. Who knows? It could do. 25,000 plainclothes officers in London alone. Where's the money coming for that? It's a lot of money. I think, what would it be? Say if you were, well, probably a lot of money, but like, say if it was for ease of numbers, £40,000 a year on average. That's £1 billion. Let me just make sure the maths is right on that. Yeah, £1 billion. I'm not saying they'd all be on 40 grand, by the way, but it was just an easy number off the top of my head. And that's just in London alone. So how many other of these plain officers are going to be over the rest of the country? We're talking about spending money wisely and things like that. 25,000 people in London just to sort of keep a lockdown on crime is a lot of people. So yeah, I do agree though that Britain does need to be a safer place to walk, live and thrive. Like I said, I've been down London a few times and there's been times where, I've not felt too comfortable. But you could say that in near enough anywhere around the country if you go to the wrong places. A transparent and fair tax system. The current tax code is a labyrinth, punishing success and driving talent away. That ends now. A new simplified tax code that can be understood in 20 minutes. No hidden pitfalls or penalties for getting richer. Success will be rewarded, not penalised. This will stop the exodus of Britain's brightest and ensure prosperity stays within our borders. A brand new tax code for cryptocurrency, working with industry leaders to encourage investments in this innovative and world-changing technology. The UK will not be left behind. So, first point, I saw the other day, Britain had the second largest amount of millionaires leave last year, mainly, I imagine, due to the tax system. Then just the tax system in general, it is ridiculous. Like, there's other countries around Europe that laugh at us for how high our taxes are. So you can hit that 40% tax barrier fairly quickly. You're talking, what is it, like 50k, I think it is, for the 40% tax bracket. And then over, I can't remember it off the top of my head, I think it's 125 or 150k, you are paying 45% tax. Then you've got places like Dubai, 0. I think the higher tax rate in America comes in. I think my brother said earlier, actually, it was like something like $670,000 or something. Which, what's that over here? Probably 450k, I imagine, something around those numbers. I don't know what the exchange rate is these days, but yeah, 57% agreed on that, 22% disagreed, and 22% neither agree or disagree. There's a clear issue with the tax system because we are, like it says, having the brightest people. They're not necessarily the brightest people, they are the wealthiest people leaving our country, which is obviously not going to help Britain advance as a country and keep at the forefront of things like technology and manufacturing. So there's a clear issue that needs to be sorted, because otherwise we are going to lose our brightest, wealthiest businesses in the near future. A brand new tax code for cryptocurrency, I think that is going to be a main advancement. I think that is going to be a massive topic over the next few years. I personally invest in quite a bit of cryptocurrencies, a few different ones, and these things are literally going to form the way we pay for things, the way the banks work. So it is going to be something that needs to be looked at and have infrastructure behind it. And another thing that it probably should go into schools now, because just being able to understand the amount of people that have no idea what cryptocurrency is, they just think it's these magic internet coins, and it's what me and my brothers call it as like a laugh. It is kind of like magic internet coins. So I think there needs to be some sort of knowledge sharing on that, just so everyone's aware of it and how it works, instead of being scared about these new technologies, that everyone knows how to use it, what it does and why and how it works. Obviously it's very complex, so even just like a basic understanding for people would be a massive improvement, I think. But yeah, there does need to be some sort of tax code for it as well, because yeah, I think it's a very grey area at the moment. So the next one: restoring masculinity and strength, the foundation of a thriving nation. So this is quite a small photo. There we go. So weak men build weak nations. Britain's decline is rooted in a culture has forgotten the value of strength, discipline, and resilience. To restore our nation's greatness, we must build its backbone, the strong men who protect, provide, and lead. First point is boxing and wrestling in schools. Discipline, courage, and perseverance aren't taught, they are forged. Bring back boxing and wrestling back into schools. We will empower young men to channel their energy, learn self-control, and develop resilience in the face of adversity. These sports don't just build physical strength, they instill mental fortitude and a sense of purpose. A generation of disciplined young men will rebuild the character of our nation and restore pride in what is meant to be British. Next one is licensed armed security. A nation that can't protect its streets can't protect its future. London must no longer be a city ruled by fear, where ambition and achievement are overshadowed by crime. By making licensed armed security accessible, we will ensure that our capital is a beacon of safety and opportunity. This policy isn't about aggression, it's about deterrence and control. A secure Britain is a Britain where families, businesses, and communities can thrive without fear. Strength, both physical and moral, is a foundation of every great nation. Britain's revival starts with restoring the virtues of masculinity, discipline, responsibility, and courage. Strong men don't just build strong nations, they inspire them. And Britain's men will lead the way. Britain needs warriors, not warriors. On this one, 36% agreed, 45% disagree, 18% neither agree or disagree. Now, I don't think necessarily having strong, disciplined, and resilient men is a bad thing. I mean, I think masculinity in general has got a very bad rap over social media over the last few years, just through the whole trends in general, the toxic masculinity thing. I think a lot of it is done for the wrong reasons at times, just plainly because people have done it for likes or views, and then it spreads a negative message in a way. I don't think boxing or wrestling or anything like that is a bad thing to come back into schools either. So I actually did a podcast with a boxing coach, and he said boxing is one of the best sports for kids that have no idea how to control sort of their anger or anything like that. Like, he's had people come from really sort of rough, bad backgrounds, and then they've been able to channel that into a sport like boxing that's given them discipline. So I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing in schools, like especially in young lads that are, obviously going through puberty. They've got testosterone running through their bodies for the first time. It's not a bad place to sort of put it into, and they are disciplined sports. So yeah, if we can, even this can even go for women as well. It's not going to be a bad thing to have people going through sports that do require discipline. Licensed armed security. It does mention about London again being ruled by fear, where ambition and achievement are overshadowed by crime, which I feel like it is. It does get a very bad rap in the news for, things like knife crime, gun crime, robbery. So it is one of them. I don't think it necessarily just has to be at men, this one. I think as a nation, that I don't think it'd be a bad thing just to, you can get women that can be masculine. It doesn't just have to be men that are masculine. You can get men that can be feminine. You know what I mean? It doesn't just have to be men. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a negative thing in general. Next one, we've got a stronger future for Britain, laying the foundations for independence and prosperity. Building a stronger independent Britain requires bold steps to secure our economic and energy future. So the first point is a national Bitcoin reserve. In an unpredictable global economy, traditional financial systems are vulnerable to manipulation and collapse. A national Bitcoin reserve will future-proof Britain's economy, giving us a decentralized, inflation-resistant asset that ensures stability and shields us from economic coercion from foreign powers. This isn't just a hedge, it's a commitment to economic sovereignty, innovation and leadership in the digital financial revolution. And the next one is nuclear power for energy independence. Britain's reliance on imported energy leaves us vulnerable to price shocks, political pressure and resource scarcity. Nuclear power is the key to breaking free from dependency, clean, efficient and reliable. It guarantees a stable energy supply while slashing emissions. By investing in modern nuclear infrastructure, we secure our energy independence, shield Britons from rising costs, and lay the groundwork for self-sufficient and thriving nation. So, first one, we've got the National Bitcoin Reserve. So, like I said in the last bit, I think cryptocurrencies are going to be a massive part of our future, and I think we need to embrace it. Otherwise, I think we are going to get left behind. In terms of what it meaning by inflation resistant, there are a limited amount of Bitcoin. So I can't remember the number off the top of my head. It may be around 30 million, I think. I can't remember how many Bitcoins there are. I'll be able to tell you in a second. Let me just go onto my app. So if we go Bitcoin. So max supply, it's 21 million Bitcoin. So there will never be any more Bitcoin. It's 21 million. So there is no way for it to be inflated other than the investments into it for the value of a coin. Whereas you've got banks printing money, literally free will, and that's where you get your inflation from. Decentralized also gives it protection. So I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing, to be quite honest. I would have to look more into how that would work. In terms of nuclear power, I actually saw a clip on Instagram today of a guy saying that we very close to being out of supply of gas, that we had to pay something like 12 million for an hour or something to keep everything running. I'm pretty sure we shut down our last coal power plant recently as well. And yeah, I don't know too much about nuclear power in terms of the costs, but I believe it would be cheaper and it's more reliable in terms of if we were to make it in our own country instead of getting it from abroad. We do have risks of, pipelines being targeted for wars and things like that go to places like Norway. I believe we get a lot of our gas from Norway. So if we could make, power and energy in our own country through nuclear, I don't think that's a bad thing either. I think there's obviously that worry of things like Chernobyl, but this is I think 1980s. We're now in 2025. Things have advanced, things have been made more safe. And I think once that public perception of it is made better, then I think it's going to be a lot more accepted. You could look at things like, it's similar to electric cars. There's obviously a push for it, and there's obviously people that don't trust them and things like that, batteries exploding and worries about all that stuff. But the more time goes on, the less things that happen, the more people jump onto it. So for this one, 30% agreed, 35% disagreed, 35% neither agree or disagree. And I imagine quite a lot of the people in there disagreeing are towards the National Bitcoin Reserve, mainly because they just don't understand crypto and how it works and how it's going to be used. But like I say, if we can get that into the school system, then it's going to be helpful. Last one, again, around the stronger future for Britain, laying the foundations for independence and prosperity. So a comprehensive national health strategy emphasising prevention. Moving beyond treatment to preventative care could significantly reduce long-term health costs and improve quality of life. Revamping the voting system, include digital options to ensure higher voter turnout and engagement, secure blockchain verified voting to increase transparency and accessibility. Creating a Ministry of Future, tasked with long-term planning and innovation. It will focus on identifying and preparing for future challenges like demographic shifts and technological disruptions. Foreign policy for Britain, working close with our largest partner government, the United States, to foster cooperation in light of the political revival. Any organisation, UN, WHO, which erodes national sovereignty will enjoy our withdrawal. We want to save Britain and not have a foreign organisation slowing us down. So, in my first thoughts, revamping the voting system with a blockchain verified voting, that would probably be a very good thing, because the way that would work in terms of blockchain, everyone would have their own sort of address. So it would stop, fake votes, where you've seen, I think in the American election, not the last one, maybe the one before, where there was all the scandals about fake votes going in and the postal votes and all this, that and the other. If everyone's doing it on a blockchain, then everyone has a individual address. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. The only issue might be is in the older generations, that could be an issue, but it does say just include digital options. So there could still be the polling stations. So that might not be an issue. The only issue would be if it went to fully digital, and then you've got a generation that may not really get what they're meant to be doing. Creating a Ministry of Future, I think that's a pretty good idea. Looking at the landscape, there probably is one already, just with a different title. But I think it is a good one, obviously, to look at what may be coming up in the future and how we can move forwards and make the most of the demographic shifts and technological disruptions. It may not have to be a disruption. It could be something that we could take advantage of. Working closely with the United States, I don't know. It would depend really how, why, and what for. It doesn't really go into much information. And I'm not really sure on the last point of that. On that one, 48% agreed, 29% disagreed, and 24% neither agreed or disagreed. So what I then did at the end of all of those, I asked, on the basis of that, would you vote for them? 39% said they would, 61% said they wouldn't. Then in my next story, I said, how would it change your answer if you knew it was Andrew Tate? Because I basically then told everyone this is his manifesto, and he is supposedly running for Prime Minister. 81% said it would stay the same, 19% said the answer would change. That 19% that said it would change were mainly the people that said they would vote for him. And I think that is mainly on the fact of, obviously his public perception and the just general feel around Andrew Tate, which, it didn't surprise me. There were still a few people that said they would still vote for him. The real interesting thing that I did find, though, so what I did, I went back through all the polls. I added up all of the votes across all, I think it was 15 policies, and it was pretty interesting. So 60% of all of the answers on the polls agreed with the policies, 25% disagreed, and 15% neither agreed or disagreed. So I found it really interesting that across all of the policies, it was 60% of answers agreed, yet only 39% of people voted. So obviously there was a big impact on the ones that were disagreeing or neither agree or disagreeing. There was obviously a major negative impact that someone then wouldn't vote for them on the back of all of the agreed policies. So yeah, it was a bit of a sort of social experiment, really, basically seeing whether the impact of knowing who it was impacted their answers. Yeah, there was a small amount of people that changed. I found it really interesting. It came to me as an idea, and I sort of rolled with it. Just wanted to see what people thought, just by not knowing that it was Andrew Tate to begin with. Because I think if I'd have said to everyone at first, this is Andrew Tate, that disagree amount would be way higher. Just basically because they may not like him as a person to begin with. And again, let me just make it clear, I'm not saying I'm a big fan or I'm supporting him in any way. Like I said, I haven't even voted for I think the last God knows how many elections, because I just don't trust any of them to do what they say. But I think as an overall, if he stuck to his manifesto and did what he says he's going to do, he probably wouldn't be the worst prime minister that we've had in recent years. If you actually look at the probably last 3 or 4 of them, I don't think any of them have actually done what they said they were going to do. And then you can look at all the corruption and everything else in between the lines. I don't think he'd necessarily be the worst person. Now, this isn't me saying that I'm going to go run out and vote for him if he actually does go and run for Prime Minister. I'm just saying I don't think he would potentially be the worst, which is a pretty crazy thing to say. Yeah, be interesting to know what you think. If you are on YouTube, drop some comments. Which ones do you necessarily agree with, disagree with? Would be interesting to find out. Also, if you are on Apple or Spotify, make sure you leave a review. If you're on YouTube, drop a like. If you're not subscribed yet, get subscribed because there's plenty of episodes coming this year. I did mention in my last one, I'm aiming to get to episode 100 by the end of the year. We are on 54 now, so we are counting them down week by week and we will get there. But I need it to reach more and more people to make it worth it over the long run. And I can only do that with the help from you guys. So please subscribe. Plenty more episodes to come. Hope you've enjoyed this one. Bit of a different one, fairly interesting. Maybe a little bit triggering for some people. Hopefully not. Hopefully don't get cancelled on the back of this. We'll see. But I hope you enjoyed it. I found it pretty interesting, mainly the social experiment with my followers on Instagram. If you did, remember, drop it a like, drop it a review, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.